What if resolving conflict could actually create peace on Earth and it started with you? Barbara With isn't just a peace activist. She channels Albert Einstein and teaches a revolutionary method called conflict revolution that's helping people heal from burnout, overwhelm, and emotional chaos. If you've ever felt stuck in repeating patterns or just wish the world made more sense, this conversation is going to blow your mind. Let's get started. Welcome to Break Free from the Burnout. This is for you if you're a purpose-driven entrepreneur who's ready to make a real difference in the world. Despite doing all the right strategies and tactics, something hidden is slowing your success. You're listening to Dr. Anastasia Chopelas, physicist turned energy healer, your guide through the quantum shifts that create real-world results so you can grow your business with more impact, income, and ease without burning out. Listen in, your next breakthrough starts now. I am thrilled to speak with Barbara With, a renowned international peace activist, author, composer, and the co-founder of Conflict Revolution. She has transformed lives with her revolutionary process for resolving conflicts, rooted in compassion and her channeling work with Albert Einstein. That part has me really fascinated. Barbara's mission is about healing conflict at its root, and in doing so, helping us move toward personal freedom and even global peace. She is taught all over the world and is currently on a world peace tour. So we're going to hear more about that today, right? And today she joins us to share her journey and vision for global peace. Welcome, Barbara. Thank you for joining me. I'm excited to take a closer look at your incredible journey and groundbreaking work.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk to you about it, of all people who love Einstein.
Yes, I really do. One of my favorite quotes that I ever heard him say was, people said, Professor Einstein, how do you feel about everybody trying to prove you wrong? And he says, I don't care about being wrong or right. I just wish to know whether I am or not. Right. And I'm just like going, yeah, that's like the way scientists think. Like, okay, so your theory is wrong. Okay, what's the right one? Right. We're more interested in the science of it rather than your kind of like your personal ego.
Yes. Yes. And in my work, speaking to him from beyond the grave, that's a lot of what the lessons of conflict revolution are. The basic premise is, do you want to be right or do you want to have peace? Now, it's not direct translation to science, but he's often said when we went into the science laboratory, we weren't holding on to an outcome. We wanted to see what it would do and observe it and then see and then go from there. So a lot of what he said in life, I think, bleeds out from afterlife.
So I picked the right quote because there are lots of them.
Mm-hmm.
I also love his quote on relativity. You put your hand on a stove, a minute feels like an hour on a hot stove, but if you spend it with a pretty girl, then an hour feels like a minute. So,
Yep. Yep. And I've always found that to be true in life. The time is so relative to what you're doing.
Yeah, it dilates. So everyone's path into this kind of deep transformative work is unique. Could you share a bit of your personal story? How did you first discover this extraordinary ability to channel Einstein, and how did it evolve into conflict revolution?
Well, it's a little the other way around, where I started out with music. So when I was very young, 4 or 5, I started to teach myself to play piano, and then I started writing music when I was 12. And all I ever wanted to be was a rock star. So when I got out of high school, I had 2 solid sets of original material and I went on the road. And I always say that the act of writing music is the same process as channeling, because I would go into the nothing and listen for the music and then pull it out, measure by measure, melody by melody. And at the time, because I was right out of high school and I was going to be a rock star, and I also had a friend whose mom was a psychic, and she was giving me readings through this time. So I was introduced to the idea of channeling, even though we didn't call it channeling back then. And all of her work, I would say in retrospect, was about helping me learn to love myself, because I came from a very traumatized home, which is probably why I produced so much music. And that was, I graduated high school in 72. So in 97, when I started spontaneously automatic writing, I knew what it was from Eunice, my mentor, but I was still very surprised. And when I said, "Who are you?" the answer was sound.
Oh, interesting.
And I was okay with that, having grown up in music and now performing. But I went on to become a fairly, I would say, world famous in Minneapolis, but I was one of a handful of practicing psychics in Minneapolis in the 80s and the 90s. And at one point, I wanted to know what these voices would say to a group of people. I was a fan of Edgar Casey and Jane Roberts. So I couldn't find anybody in my circle. And then Teresa showed up, and she was a referral, and she referred 6 of her girlfriends. And then she referred Kimberly, her best friend. And she and Kimberly couldn't get enough of learning what these readings meant. No one had ever done that. People would come and go. They'd come for their reading, and I'd give them the tape and they'd go, but we never talk about what it said. So they started showing up at my gigs and having these conversations. And at the same time, I thought to myself, oh my gosh, here's this group. And they thought, hey, maybe Barbara will come and work with us. And so we started doing these groups in December of 1993. And it's from there that everything has arisen. And actually, conflict revolution came before Einstein, because when Teresa and Kim and I did one of our first channeling sessions as the 3 of us, they asked, "Who are you?"
Oh, interesting.
And the answer was, "You can call us angels."
Wow.
And that was, I think, the beginning of my realization of my scientific mind, because I said, "Well, what? What does this mean? Angels, quote unquote. What does that actually mean? Are there angels? What is, So the 3 of us had this conversation. And in the end, we said, we don't really care who it is, because what they were telling us was changing our lives so profoundly and so quickly in so many positive regenerative ways that we were hooked.
Wow. Yeah, I know that, when you were saying that you were into the music and you go somewhere, I think all art is like that. I have some of my paintings behind me. When I get into painting, you go basically into a trance.
Exactly.
Right.
Everyone does. This is
Yeah,
not,
everyone.
and it depends on what you're listening for, what you're seeing, how you interact with that energy.
Yeah, and it's the same thing. I have started running when I was 14 and never stopped. And when I couldn't run anymore, because I'm a little bit older than you, I graduated in 70. And
Same eras.
yeah, same era. And when I injured my knee, I then started walking. And when I go on my quiet walks, that's when things pop out. You go into a trance during that time, right? And that's how I connected. Like I connect too, but I don't do it the same way, but having it in a group, that's really fascinating that people started asking like why that? What is this about? What does it mean?
Yeah.
So for those new to this work, what exactly is conflict revolution compared to conflict resolution?
Well, these angels told us they had this theory. It was a process that they theorized, if we did this process and it involved revolving and resolving conflict first in ourselves, that the byproduct would be world peace. and that they needed people to test their theory on live conflict. And so the three of us were like, okay, what does this mean? Let's do
I'm
it.
in.
Hey, I'm in. And of course, so we had to have a fight. And we, long story short, got the transcript we had just done. We had done 2 master groups, and that one was called conflict resolution. But what it said was, if you're involved in a conflict, the root of your part is within you. And now, in 2025, that's not a revolutionary thing. But back in 1994, all of us were always projecting and blaming and all of this. So when we had our first fight and we cycled around to get this transcript and say, here's what we're supposed to do, it was kind of like, I think we called it Satori, which I think was this sort of instant awakening on all 3 of our parts to go, oh, and so I could come back to the table and say, all right, here's what I need to do. Here's what I can do. And Kim came back, Teresa, and it changed not only did it change the whole dynamic of the conflict that we were in and the resolution of it, but that night I went to work. I was singing at a bar in Minneapolis, a little piano bar, and there was a waitress there who never had the time of day for me. And I didn't really care. It's just what happens. And I walked in, she could not get enough of me. Oh, do you like Patti Smith? I've got some cassettes. And she put $20 in my tip jar. And I thought, this is what those angels are talking about. If we resolve it here, the natural manifestation becomes something greater than we could do than if we went at the arena in which it's been created. Like I could never have drug her aside and said, how come you don't like me? And make her like me. So that was really the beginning steps of conflict revolution. And I started training it. Actually, I worked at a nonprofit, and it started out as staff development, and then it was a training program, and we turned it into anger management and personal empowerment. And that's really how conflict revolution got started. And you can see it's different. Conflict resolution, in the classical term, is where you sit down and you listen to each other and you talk and you're respectful.
And you
This
try to
is
come together and,
compromise
and all that. And yes. And the thing is that we, and this is something that I teach in relationships, is that we radiate out what we have inside of us. So if you have this underneath feelings of guilt or anger or sadness or whatever, you're radiating that out, and it will attract other people that feel that way. So then you end up with this negativity happening, and it will repulse people that don't want that in their lives because they feel it in you. And so it sounds like you help people release that thing that's buried in there. So now people are going, oh, I want to be around you. I
exactly.
like the way I feel around you, because people don't know that in the first few seconds when you meet somebody, that's when they form the opinion. I mean, it can alter later, but they form this opinion based on just the way they look at you, because you wear your emotions on your face. People don't even realize, right? And people
Well,
use,
and they're in your body.
yeah, and they're in
They
your
they
body
they
where you just,
radiate outward,
yes,
like you said.
right. The Heart Math Institute says it's up to 25 feet away that people can feel it, but I think it's farther than that.
Yeah, and I'm no scientist, but there's some sort of theory about entrainment or something. But
Yes.
yeah,
So getting back to working through burnout, right? Many listeners, like purpose-driven entrepreneurs and coaches, are working through burnout, hidden energetic patterns, and overwhelm. How can learning conflict revolution help someone clear out those patterns at a deep level and reclaim their energy?
I think this is just a brilliant model. It's so Einsteinian. It's very, very simple, but it makes perfect sense. And what we do is we work with what we call the 3 human dimensions. So just like your liver and your heart, and they all do different things, but they work together. And it's intellect in the head, intuition in the heart, and emotion in the solar plexus. And the basic process of conflict resolution is, of course, getting up in the morning and doing your prayer of gratitude, and then stepping into your witness and intending that today you're going to witness yourself and you're going to see, what are you thinking? What's going on here? What is intuition? Getting to know it from this heart center. And then the way that we teach people to breathe, we want all emotion. Emotion is really the basis of the physical reality. And we want to breathe it all through with our breath. And the idea is that Einstein has delivered what he calls the first fundamental force of the universe is compassion. And it's the energy that uses the creative intelligence that uses the other 4 fundamental forces to impel the creation of the physical world one step at a time. And when we align to compassion, our emotions are flowing freely, even the difficult ones. They're coming into our heart and they're informing our intuition, which is informing us the next step. It's an impelling. It's not a, rational. It's take this step for the good of the whole, because, intuition knows that. But when it gets to intellect, that's where the conflicts, and Einstein says, all of the conflicts that manifest in the world are between this part of intuition and intellect, because intellect has been given the power of free will. So when intuition tells you turn left, it doesn't engage your hand to grab the steering wheel. That's what happens up here in the intellectual. So the cruel joke or the most empowering detail is that intellect and ego have the power of free will. So they can say no to intuition, and often do. And we've all done it. Your body says rest, and your mind says, no, I can't rest. I have to. And that's how burnout takes place.
Yes, exactly right.
So we teach people just little bite-sized baby steps. In fact, I did a reading for a woman the other day. She has twins and a full-time job and a husband, and they explained to her how to catch nanoseconds of time to breathe. Like, okay, figure out, when are you in the bathroom? When are you driving in the car? Just to be able to feel and breathe on a regular basis without letting that emotion marry itself to that thinking. And in that way, we hear our intuition more. And then, of course, the mastering of the intellect is, how are we going to bring that ego into alignment to compassion to do what it's supposed to do, which is to be listening for intuition and then doing it what it tells you to do. So that's kind of a basic overview of how we teach people. And it's really accessible. It's like not some weird thing out there. I don't mean weird, because I meditate. I do a lot of different
I
kinds of
think
things.
meditation is totally normal.
Yeah.
It's totally normal because you're just sitting and getting quiet with yourself, and there's nothing woo about it. If you can think, you can meditate. If you can pray, you can meditate, right?
Yeah. And it's part of one of the tools, and like I said, if your heart is ailing, you do one thing. If your stomach's ailing, you do another. If your emotions are plugged up, you do one thing with your breath and moving it and honoring it. If your thoughts are running wild, then there's a different thing that we do.
Yeah,
but the idea is to get it in alignment with compassion.
Right. So the key is that you get your thoughts, your intuition, and your emotions aligned, so they're all doing the same thing, because it sounds like a lot of people are suffering from inner conflict, and that inner conflict is what causes the burnout and the overwhelm.
Exactly. And when the intuition is impelling us to take that step, it's really amazing the results, the kind of miraculous results that come in such little increments. If your body says rest and you say, no, I'm going to run around, what, of course, you're going to burn out. But if your body says rest and you find 6 little different nanos places to rest your mind,
Hmm.
stop worrying about tomorrow, stop thinking about yesterday, be in that meditative moment while you're feeling and breathing all that through. And I think it's when people do that, the results are a lot quicker than you think
Yep.
when you're struggling.
Yep. It's not like the traditional talk therapy that takes a long time. It gives you space to breathe. And one thing that I tell a lot of my clients and students is that rest is a verb. You are actually doing something when you rest.
Exactly. Yes, yes. But we overrate, like we underrate it, Oh,
Yes.
I can't rest.
Yeah.
But
Whenever I was writing like a really deep scientific article or when I was writing my book, I had to put it away and let it sort of marinate or let the dough rise, let it ripen. And then I could go back to it. So just keep on pounding on the same thing doesn't allow it. It's like everything takes its time to get done, right? And for me that was that. So I love what you said about it. So I know you presented on Einstein's unified field theory and the science of compassion. So we just talked about that. What has been the response from the scientific community to this channeled work?
it's been really phenomenal to me because, as I said, I am not a scientist. And when I did a book in 2005 called Imagining Einstein Essays on M Theory, World Peace, and the Science of Compassion. And I did it because I thought, well, it's a 100-year anniversary. Let's just do a little book. I had no idea what he was going to say. And he delivered this unified field theory along with this map of human consciousness, which includes what we're talking about, but also this scientific definition of compassion. And the thing that was challenging for me, not being a scientist, was that he said the source is in the center of the earth and it operates like a black hole. And at the time, I said to him and myself, I have no idea if that is even possible. And so I have to like have this faith. I'm going to stand up in front of scientists and say this. But when I presented, the first time was in 2007. I just released the book and I was on a book tour in Philly, and it was a metaphysical meetup. And I thought it was going to be woo woo, but it was amateur physicists, amateur chemists. And I walked in and I was like, oh dear.
I don't think you have much to worry about.
Well, I got up and I said, okay, I'm not here to convince you it's Einstein, but will you tell me what you think of this? Because all I ever wanted to be was a rock star, and I have no idea. And they went crazy. The chemist was like, oh my God, it used to be there were 6 blah, blah, blahs, but you're saying now there's 9. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, but if that's what you see in this picture. And the physicist too was like, you're taking the 0-point energy field and you're marrying it with the blah, 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 blah. And it's like, yeah, I bet. So
Yeah, what's interesting is that my scientific work was studying materials at extremely high pressures, and we would try to put earth materials put them in between 2 diamonds, so you had a window to see in, and we would heat it up with a laser so you could see actually what was happening inside the earth at different points, depending on
oh,
whether you
right.
had iron or whether you had a mineral in there. So that's really interesting. But yeah, so at high pressures, things work differently. So
Well,
you,
and now in 2024, I have a master class I did. It's just extensive. It's the whole unified field and everything. And I found a quote from Brian Greene, a famous string theorist, who, by the way, when he was describing how he did math and science, was just like channeling. I thought, you're channeling.
yeah.
But he said the very same thing. He said that black holes are not just the big things that launch up planets, they can be, and he thinks that the Earth is in the center of a black hole. So there's a lot of validation, but it took a lot of time because like I said, I didn't know, and I had to risk, being really ridiculous. But I was at the Science of Consciousness conference in April of 2024, and that was really affirming. I had a little tiny, tiny, tiny space in it. I didn't even speak, but I had a little space in it, and I left there like, so I applied again, and this year I'll be speaking in Barcelona at the Science of Consciousness conference to all of the scientists who have been looking for the nature of consciousness. And it's actually one day before the anniversary of Einstein's last manifesto in 1955, July 9th, the Russell Einstein manifesto that was read in London that said, world leaders, please resolve your conflicts peacefully because no one will survive World War III.
That's
So
true.
here I am on almost the exact 70th anniversary of his last manifesto addressing the scientists in Barcelona. So I think there's something afoot. It's bigger than me.
Yes, and what you say is exactly right, is that whenever I had breakthroughs, because some of the work that I did was like people go, how do you come up with that? And that was getting into that meditative state. I would go jogging at lunchtime while I was running a lab. I would go jogging at lunchtime. Because I had like a weird result. I'm going out like, I wonder what that's about. And then I just let my mind free float on it, and the answers would start coming, right? And that's
Right.
right, new results, new answers. How do I approach it? How do I explain it to people? And yes, that's exactly right. And
And it's not as hard as people think it is. It's
it
just not.
no, you just stop thinking and just let your mind wander.
That's hard.
No, but letting your mind wander, like when I went jogging, I just thought about my breath and my feet and, how far am I going to go and how beautiful it was outside. Because that was when I was living in Germany, and, it's green there. It's beautiful. So I would go out and enjoy the birds and things and stop thinking about whatever I was working on and grinding on. So it's basically that's all it is stop thinking about it. It's just like when you're doing your art or you're writing a song, you just stop thinking and then boom, it comes through. So, what are some of the toughest cases you've seen? Clients deeply stuck in burnout or conflict, and what kinds of breakthroughs have they experienced through your conflict revolution?
I have given this workshop to thousands and thousands of people through the years since 1999. And to me, it's almost like each and every one is just completely fascinating to me. So, for example, there was a woman in Norway, and she came to my workshop and she said, "Oh, my mother in law hates me. She wants to send me back to Barbados." She was from Barbados and married a Norwegian guy. And this has been going on for 25 years. And so we got into it. And as I was teaching it, she was like putting the pieces together before we got to the big outcome. She's like, "You know where this is going, don't you?" I said, "Well, I do, but it's not like just because I'm so amazingly psychic, because it's kind of a formula, you know?" And her eyes got big and teary. And she said, "I'm homesick." I said, "Why don't you go back to Barbados and visit? Got the kids, my husband." "Well, how old are your kids?" I'm thinking, she's got like a 6-month old and a whatever. "Well, they're 14 and 19. And in 1 minute, she came back the next day and she was like, we call it the Rolodex effect, where flip, 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 flip. 25 years of projecting onto her mother-in-law was gone like that. And I have seen over and over and over, and in my own life, completely coming to these miraculous conclusions once we find the place within us, and then we do something about it. We release the feeling, we get rid of the lie, I can't go home because I've got these children who are like 14 and 19. And the next thing you know, she's going to Barbados twice a year and everybody's happy. So that isn't necessarily like a critical piece, like somebody who's in this really critical condition. I think once we learn this, we don't get into critical condition.
Yeah.
That's the
Well,
whole point.
yeah, the thing that I've seen that happens, and I've experienced it myself, is once you learn the lesson you were meant to learn from the conflict, whatever it was, once you learn the lesson, like I'm valuable, I'm intelligent, I'm capable, whatever the lesson was, like I'm free to come and go. For example, for her, that was the lesson. And once she learned that lesson, then all of the conflict just dissolves.
Yes. And the revolution part of it is that, you know, there's two skills. One is how do we feel and breathe emotion fully? And like you were talking about psychotherapy, I think there's a lot of re-traumatizing in talk therapy. Just keep, you know, the stories, but also when we get stuck in, like, I had a conflict and my soundbite was, I called it the drunken marketing manager. And I didn't even work for her, but she was giving me her work. And then she'd complain that I didn't do it good enough. And that was my soundbite. And so I couldn't feel and breathe enough about her. And I thought, okay, I better revolve this. So where am I doing this? Where am I giving somebody my work and then, you know, complaining about that they're not doing it? And you know, your intellect is like, I don't do that. I would blah, 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 blah. And then after 2 weeks, I had to call Teresa. And of course, she knew in a minute when I told her the soundbite. She's like, remember the time you and your husband were separated and he was paying the mortgage and putting up the screens and taking care of the pets and paying all the bills. And all you could say was he didn't support you. And we call it hanging and dang. Because you're like, dang, that's me. And you feel it in your body. And I was able to go then to my husband and say, you know, I need to make some amends. And the next day I went to work and she was gone. She had been fired. So there is this shift that happens in this miraculous way. And I didn't do this to get her fired. I did it because I know that once I get my piece and I resolve it here, then it shifts everything.
Yeah, exactly. And it shifts it in an instant.
Yes.
Right. It's instantaneous. It's like what we would call a quantum shift, right? Quantum shift happens instantaneously. There's no known path. It winks out of existence and winks into existence at exactly the same time. That's a quantum jump or quantum shift. That's what
Nice.
is actually technically in an atom that experiences a shift.
Wow. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah. For someone who's listening today, who's ready to begin clearing inner conflict or energetic patterns, what's one simple practice or mindset shift they could start using right away? We've talked about many of them, but what would be a key one?
I think the morning setup, when you get up and you say your prayer of gratitude, and then you set an intention. Today I'm going to get into my witness. And I'm going to watch myself. And we start to get to know, what is our intellect? What is it doing? Paying attention to it. What does it mean to be heart-centered? What is your relationship to your own intuition? People have different ways, like we were saying, you know, different ways that they experience that intuitive. And what's happening emotionally? And how do you deal with it? And so it's just the first steps. And you don't need to take a class and you don't need to do meditation. It's just this intention to be that observant of your own self and your own domain. And really, no one can think your thoughts. No one can feel your feelings. No one can intuit your intuition. This is your domain. And I think sometimes people have difficulty because it is hard to look in the mirror. You don't want to see you much. It's easier to project on somebody, but when you do and that shift happens, then that's what we build on. Like day after day, you start to see these things, kind of miraculous things start to take place, little baby things, but they're huge if you've been dealing with them for 25 years, like Judy had.
Yes, exactly. And they disappear in an instant.
It's a miracle. It's a miracle, as we say.
That's really adorable. So you're going or currently on a world peace tour and bringing this work to new audiences. What is your vision for how conflict resolution can help both individuals and the world moving forward towards peace and healing?
I've been at this for decades, and I've been through a lot, like you have, of shifting culture, revelations, evolution. And I just think that it's time is now. And I have been prepared to be a rock star. And I think, as Diana said in her interview, Princess Diana, I did an interview with Party of 12 back in the day. And her whole message was, if people who left flowers in front of the palace all did conflict revolution, we'd have world peace in a day. So my intention is to get this information to as many people as possible, because one person at a time. And yet I know that in other situations when I've been in front of big audiences and the energy shifts, it's really remarkable how we tap into that synergy. So that's my vision, is that I'm going to get this out there, get this up and out there. And once you hear it, you can't unhear it.
Exactly. So how can people find you?
Barbara with WITH, like the preposition, barbarawith.com. And right now I have what I'm calling the Conflict Revolution Challenge, where I had created 2 free downloads. One is just a very simple instructional how to do conflict resolution, and the other is a 12-week workbook so that you can follow along. And every week we have different things that we focus on, and you can record all the little things that are happening. And I also have a invitation for people to take the new manifesto of peace that we've published and the party is signed on to and Albert is signed on to. Yeah. And also I have a special for you or your listeners. I have readings, and I have half-hour readings and hour readings. And if you want to buy a half-hour reading, I'll be happy to extend it into an hour.
Wow, that's very generous. Thank you. So they can find that all at barbarawith.com.
Yes.
Oh, excellent. So be sure and visit her website, connect with those resources, and let's be the change we wish to see in the world, right?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you so much, Barbara, for coming on. This has been an exciting conversation.
Well, I'd love to talk more too about the scientific side that like those little tidbits that you gave. I was like, oh, you know stuff.
I do. I do know stuff. Thank you for listening to Break Free from the Burnout. You'll find resources and show notes on our website at breakfreefromtheburnout.com, including the information on Barbara With and her offered resources. Until next time, I'm Dr. Anastasia Chopelas, sending you golden healing light and success vibes on your journey to becoming an entrepreneur who is aligned, confident, and prosperous. Your gifts are so needed in this world.